Well, as we all know, theater, one of my favorite things. It comes in all shapes and sizes. And our next guest, he's taking the stage by himself. It is Gabe Mollica coming to Chattanooga with his one-man show. It's called Solo. Very fitting. Gabe, thanks for being with us today.
Josh, it's my pleasure. I can't wait to come to Chattanooga.
You're going to love it. You're going to love it. So let's give me a little background on you first, Gabe. I know that you went to a pretty small college in New York, and take me from there. How did you end up creating the show that we're going to see?
Yeah, I fell in love with stand up after college. I was teaching in Scotland and I needed something to do all day. So I just bought notebooks and started going to a coffee shop and started writing jokes. And so my background is in musical theater and then stand up comedy. And I sort of always knew I wanted to make theater. And so it was only a natural extension that like I would build up enough jokes and stories and build it into a solo show. And I've been very fortunate that that show's been able to run off Broadway. And now I get to take it around the country, which has been a real dream come true.
Absolutely. Are we going to see you sing and dance in this show at all, or is it just storytelling?
It's just storytelling. In my
Okay.
next show, I'm actually working on some singing potentially. So no spoilers,
Oh,
yes. But I do talk about my love of musical theater, my relationship with Stephen Sondheim. We wrote lots of letters to each other. And so sort of my love of theater and musical theater sort of bleeds into my comedy. And so I always say it's like the most complicated comedy show and the least complicated theater show you'll ever see.
I love that. I love that. We're finding that niche little intersection there in the middle, and I am that person. You have found me, and I am so excited. Now, I want to talk about. I listened to your episode on This American Life this morning, is getting ready for this,
Yeah.
and I love that you finally got to have that moment with your friend Tim. You'll hear about this in the show, but tell me, have you listened to the to that episode?
Yeah, a few times.
Okay. So what was it like hearing the host and Tim in the car ride the day after in that conversation they had? Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so my show is about a friendship breakup. And for years, I was touring the country and I was workshopping the show about this friendship breakup. And the show gained some success in New York, and a producer from This American Life showed up to the show, which was like, again, amazing. And she was like, "Hey, your friend, your former friend who you talk about in the show, has he seen the show?" And I was like, "No, he hasn't." And so we end up inviting him. And that's what the episode of This American Life is. It's that my former friend, who I sort of devote an 80-minute show to, comes and sees the show. And what's really great about the This American Life is that we've now incorporated audio from that episode, which people may have heard, may not have heard, into the show. So there's a moment towards the end where people get to watch me listen to that audio. And so I won't spoil exactly how I react to it, but it was emotional. I mean, anytime you hear two people speaking so candidly on the record about their friendship, it's a deep emotional thing, but it's something that's allowed me to connect with people all over the country. And so that's my favorite thing. After the show, if you stay, I will be at the door. We can talk about friendship. We can talk about your friendship breakup. Like, I try to be really accessible in that way because the show is very personal and I want to share my life with people. I feel like that's sort of like my job as a storyteller, as a comedian. And so it's been a real great opportunity to be able to do that.
Absolutely. And if you haven't listened to that episode, the last 10 minutes of Gabe's section is a true roller coaster. I got excited. I wanted to cry. I got a little mad. I wanted to get in front of Gabe and just start throwing punches. It was, so I'm very excited to kind of to be there with you. I hope I can come to the show, Gabe, and I hope that I can experience that with you because I would love to I was hoping you had been able to put the audio in the show. So that's very, very cool. And that's what I love about theater is you can tell any story you want. Either it's personal or it's made up, like the shows we see on Broadway sometimes. So what is so special to you about storytelling and telling the story that you tell in Solo?
Yeah, I sort of knew I had this friendship breakup and I knew right away. I was like, oh, this is like a big thing that's happened in my life. I started comedy right after it. And so to be honest with you, it felt like I couldn't do anything else comedically until I told this story. It felt like I had to do it. And those are the stories I love, that people have a sense of urgency where they're like, I need to get this out into the world. And at the beginning, it was like, hey, maybe 10 people are here at one night. And I just kept working on it and working on it and working on it. And now I get to share it with lots of people, which has been really important to me. And so I love those types of stories that feel, small in scope. The show is about one friendship, really. But it was so important to me And when you tell that to a room full of strangers, there's something really powerful that goes on, because then people want to share with me. They want to have a back and forth. They want to tell me about their friendship or how their friendship resolved in some way. And so it's been a real gift to be able to do that. And I think that's what I love about storytelling, as opposed to just stand up. I do just stand up all the time. I like it. It's helpful for me. But I feel like what I'm best at is communicating to a large group of people about the personal things in my life. That's what I want to do.
Absolutely. Exactly. I was just listening to clips from the show and different things, and I was starting to think of friends that I've had in the past and how I would react to this kind of conversation. So I think what's also really interesting for me personally connecting with this, I turned 30 in a week. And so like getting ready for that next step and friendship. So what have you learned, or what advice do you give people when they ask about just friendships in adulthood? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so I talk about like my bro-y group of friends in the show, and how sometimes a couple years ago we would have, from my perspective, trouble connecting in a deeper way. And one of the nice things about doing the show and talking about those relationships is that they've gotten a lot stronger. The best thing I could advise people is like, call your friends, use your phone as a phone. It's a thing that I've been doing so much more recently, and it's so much better than a text message. It makes you feel so much less alone. That's like the number one thing. I'm not going to tell you to join a bowling league if you don't want to join a bowling league. I'm not going to tell you to like go on Reddit and search like how to make friends, but like there are people in your life that will want to talk to you, and to use those people as resources, because it's I don't think friendship is therapy, but I do think it's therapeutic.
Oh, I love that. Oh, I love that, Gabe. It's not therapy, but it's therapeutic. Absolutely. And what are you looking forward to about, or what do you look forward to about getting to perform this show across the country, which means all different kinds of people are getting to see it? What do you hear from audiences?
You know, one of my favorite things is that on a small level, certain jokes hit in different cities for different reasons. Like when I was in Los Angeles, any reference to a movie they really loved. When I was in Pittsburgh, they loved all the drinking stories. When I was in upstate New York, they loved the theater stuff, because a lot of people drive down to see theater. So you sort of never know what's going to hit or what's going to resonate with a particular room. So I've loved learning about the country in that way. But the other thing is that like the main thrust of the story, the main relationship, people have, you can be from anywhere in this country, or I've done the show around the world, and you can relate to, oh, I had a friendship that like didn't end that well, and I feel is unresolved in some way. That felt so specific to me because my story feels so specific. But the more specific I got, the more universal it became. And now I feel so comfortable going to a place like Chattanooga, which I've never been. I'm like, oh, I know I'm going to connect with a bunch of people there, and that's why I get on the plane. That's why it's worth going.
Absolutely. And speaking of the personal, how easy is it for you to get on stage and tell this story of your life? Is it something that you've worked on over the last, because you first performed the show in 2019, correct?
Yeah.
And so what's it been like growing the story and then hearing from Tim and his side of things? What does that look like over the last 5 years?
One of the Ira Glass, who hosts This American Life, always talks about your taste level is always really high, and you're trying to get your ability to match that level. So at the beginning, I had this really heavy story to tell, and I just didn't know how to tell it, right? It took me a long time to gain the chops to emotionally connect with people, not just tell people what happened, but to have an emotion behind it and know how I felt about it. And so the reason it's taken so long is because it's a piece of art, certainly, but it's based on my real life. So you sort of have to do the work in real life and then be able to turn it into art. You need a little perspective. And you also just need to become a better joke writer and a better storyteller. So the runway has been really important for me. In my career, I would rather things happen a little bit too slow than a little bit too fast. Like had the show had way too much success too early, I wouldn't have been ready for it. But by the time I was able to tour the country, I know the show works because I've worked on it so much. And as far as Tim coming, I mean, it's an emotional part of the show, right? Like, I'm part of me like didn't want him to see it. I was conflicted about it, but now I think now I can't imagine ending the show any other way. And having an updated version that gets into all the nitty gritty of our relationship now feels like a really fitting ending. Like I know we're getting ready to film the special because I know it's like ready to be out there.
Oh, I'm so excited for you, Gabe. Now I got to know, we're taking a left turn here. Do you have a favorite friendship in theater, in TV, in a movie, in a show? Is there something that you wish you had, or just like you're like, oh, I love anytime these two are together?
Yeah, my show is really inspired by Sondheim musicals. I love Sondheim musicals, and so Merrily We Roll Along, uh, yeah, it's a show about a friendship breakup, and it happens in reverse order. And I quote that show in my show, and so um, it's one of those things where the Sondheim people will be like, "Oh, I know what he's doing," and normal people might not. But I feel like the show works for everybody. But that relationship and like what it feels like, the optimism and the hope of a beginning of a friendship, and then how it ends up not the way you wanted. It feels very human and very messy. And I certainly take a lot of inspiration from that. I don't necessarily think that's like the goal, like you want friendships that are a little bit more sweet or beautiful. And this one is beautiful. It just happened to end.
Absolutely. Did you get to see Merrily while it was on Broadway the most recent time?
I did, yeah.
Oh, Gabe, I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous. And then let's just real quick. You talked about him a couple times now. Stephen Sondheim. The story you tell about this it made me laugh and smile so big and so hard, and it comes full circle. Do you still have that envelope and letter? Is it like framed? Is it around you right now? Where does that live?
It lives in my childhood bedroom in my parents' house, where it's nice and safe. I was just thinking about today, actually, about moving it to my room in Queens. But yeah, I mean, Sondheim's a really important part of my life, and that story I tell is in the show, so you will see it. And I think it something happens even bigger in context, because it's an isolated story that I used to write letters to him, but it sort of all comes back around in my show. And so it's something that's why it's sometimes hard to tell people what my show's about. I'm like, it's about a friendship breakup, and also my time working at summer camp, and also Stephen Sondheim. But I do promise that, like, even if you're not a musical theater person, even if you love Adam Sandler movies, I quote Adam Sandler movies throughout the show. Like, there's a joke for everyone. That's one of the things I love to tell people. Like, my friend Glenn's dad was a New York City policeman for 40 years, and he laughed at jokes. I was like, okay, cool. Like, even Mr. McKenna thinks that bit is good. So there's something for everybody, but the Sondheim people are rewarded for being nerds.
Perfect. And we appreciate it very much. I wouldn't say I know a few. I'm not huge into it, but I love the stuff I've seen, and it's just always a fun time. Well, Gabe, I'm so excited that you're bringing this show to Chattanooga. I think we're going to absolutely love it. Where do we go if we want to keep up with everything you're doing, get tickets, anything like that?
Yeah, we're playing the Barking Legs Theater in Chattanooga. All the information is on my Instagram. That's the easiest. It's just my name, Gabe Mollica, and I post a lot of clips and jokes and stories and stuff like that. And I would love for you to come out to Chattanooga. I'm so excited to be in that part of the country, and I'm just excited to see a new place and meet new people.
Well, we're excited to have you, Gabe. Thank you so much, and break a leg.
Thank you.
Did you enjoy what you just saw? Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss anything.